Coming up, to the world they appear to be one of the most happy-go-lucky bands out there. I mean, just four nerdy musicians rocking out with crunchy guitars and a touch of sweet pop perfection. With music that was more fun than a carnival ride. However, that's not how this band's lead singer saw this band or himself at all. He thought he was dark and brooding and troubled. So when everybody started laughing and calling his music hilarious, he was a punch to the gut. I mean, dark, funny, whatever you want to call it, this band's multi-platinum debut is a modern-day standard. In fact, it was so good, 15-plus albums later, they have never replicated its success or originality. So did they peak right out of the gate? Well, one zealous anti-fan said yes. Sick of so-called subpar albums, this hater offered to pay the band $10 million to go away for good. But was it enough money to break them up? Tell you, this is a crazy story. Find out what happened coming up next on Professor of Rock. Hey music junkies, Professor of Rock, always here to celebrate the greatest artists and the greatest songs of all time. You know, if you remember being entertained by the cat versus mouse team of Tom and Jerry growing up, you're gonna dig this channel of deep musical nostalgia. Make sure to subscribe below right now, click the big red button. I know you'll find something to dig on this channel. We have some great interviews coming up. Check it out, click the bell so you know when it's coming out. Also check us out on Patreon to help us keep this a daily channel. The link for that's below. So I'm excited to return to another one of my favorite shows that we do on this channel. We call it Breakthrough. In this show, we break down songs, albums, or events that kicked open the door to an artist or band's career and gave them the long-term momentum to rocket to success. Today's episode, from Weezer's 1994 debut album, it's one of the coolest songs of the decade, Undone-the Sweater Song. So in 1989, right out of high school, future Weezer lead singer Rivers Cuomo moved cross-country to LA. A total shredder to the core, his plan was to make it big as a heavy metal guitarist. However, that proved to be a short-lived dream. Now, fortunately, Rivers met his soon-to-be Weezer bandmates while working at Tower Records. Moving in with drummer Patrick Wilson and bassist Matt Sharp, there were a few different band variations before Weezer officially formed on Valentine's Day of 1992, with guitarist Jason Cropper rounding out the mix. By this point, Rivers and Pat had already been writing songs for months. Between December 1991 and January 1992, they embarked on the 50-song project. It was a challenge to write 50 songs for the new band. According to Matt Sharp, they rotated through these tracks playing shows on the LA club scene. By process of elimination, they narrowed that long list down to an album's worth of material. But Rivers, who was not convinced Weezer was going to make it, actually gave himself a deadline to make a career out of music. He actually had sonic genius Brian Wilson in mind. In fact, he once said, and I quote, "The Beach Boys made Pet Sounds, I think it came out when Brian was 23. And by that point, he'd already had like 20 #1 hits, so I figured, man, if I can't even get a record deal by the time I'm 23, I'm just going to pack it in." You know, it's never a good idea to compare yourself or your band to Brian Wilson. That's just my take. They also didn't have 20 #1 hits. They had a lot of hits, but anyway. So from there, it would be a year-and-a-half slog, playing in virtual obscurity before Weezer finally got their record deal. I mean, a lot of times there were 10 people or less at their shows. It was brutal. However, miraculously, just 2 weeks before Cuomo's 23rd birthday, Weezer signed with DGC, a subsidiary of Geffen Records. This was in June of '93. At the top of their producer wish list was former Cars co-frontman Rick Ocasek. And though it seemed like a long shot, the band sent him a demo tape anyway. They fully expected to be rejected on the spot. But on the contrary, Ocasek loved Weezer's sound and had him join him at New York's Electric Lady Studios to cut the record. It was 2 months of exhausting work, and during that time, Jason Cropper ran afoul with the rest of the band and was ultimately fired. Needing a replacement and fast, the guys auditioned Brian Bell from back in California. They quizzed him over the phone about his favorite Star Wars action figure. Bell answered, Hammerhead. You can remember that one, very cool. That was all they needed to hear. Well, of course, that and Bell's sweet guitar skills played over the demo tape that they sent him. So with Bell on board, Weezer finished the album and released it on May 10th of 1994. An eponymous debut, it has since universally been called the Blue Album. It features the foursome standing in front of a blue background. Hence the title. Described by Rivers as a personal diary, the frontman absolutely throws himself headlong into these songs. I mean, jealousy, obsession, confidence, optimism, sarcasm, personal trauma, and anecdotes, it's all there. And it's so much fun to listen to, even when it shouldn't be. Said Rivers about it, and I quote, "None of these songs are perfect, but I think you can hear that we're trying hard to be honest and real. The record sounds kind of weird, but if you turn it up extremely loud and then lie down, it can be rewarding." So regarding today's featured track, Undone-the Sweater Song, Jason Cropper aptly described it as enigmatic and mysterious. In his words, the Sweater Song is kind of psychedelic rock, kind of Pixies, kind of totally unique like nothing else. It's like a Shel Silverstein poem. End of quote. And you know what? He nailed it with that quote. I can definitely see Shel Silverstein writing a poem about an unraveling sweater. Double entendre and all. The idea for the song, that actually came to Rivers when he was attending community college in LA. This was while he was in English 101. His professor cited Albert Einstein, who used the image of an unraveling sweater to explain how to write a thesis statement. Rivers thought that this was a super intriguing, inspiring image. So he went home and wrote a song basically using Albert Einstein's words for the chorus. As it turns out, the Sweater Song was the first song that Rivers actually finished altogether. Not only for WEEZER, but ever. Talking about the title, Cuomo said it was originally just one word, undone. But after every show, someone would come up to the band and ask him about that one Sweater Song, so they put sweater in the name. But get this, so Rivers hates parentheses songs, parentheses and song titles. He just thought it's ugly, so he purposely used a dash instead. In 2009, Cuomo admitted that he had maybe tapped a little bit too far into his metal influences for Undone by accidentally stealing a page out of Metallica's playbook. Actually, specifically from Welcome Home Sanitarium. Said Rivers about it, "I was trying to write a Velvet Underground type song because I was super into him, and I came up with that guitar riff. I just picked up that acoustic guitar, and the first thing I played was that riff. Now, it wasn't until years after that I wrote it that I realized it's almost a complete ripoff of Sanitarium by Metallica. It just perfectly encapsulates WEEZER to me. You're trying to be cool like Velvet Underground, but your metal roots just pump through unconsciously." To a lot of people's surprise, the Sweater Song was supposed to be really sad. But to Rivers' dismay, people thought it was hilarious. This disparity on how the track was intended to be heard and how it was received, that was a defining moment for the frontman. He was sure that WEEZER was going to be the next Nirvana, and he thought the rest of the world would see them that exact way, as a super important, super powerful, heartbreaking heavy rock band. Serious artists. I mean, Undone in particular captured some of Cuomo's darkest thoughts. He described it as the feeling you get when the train stops and the little guy comes knocking on your door. Or in other words, the ride is over and it's time to go. It was supposed to be a down and out song, and everybody was laughing at it. When Rivers realized that there was a massive gap between how he and everyone else saw WEEZER, it was a gut punch. People were calling them this comical band. It's easier to hear Undone as a tragic song, when you listen to early versions of the track. According to band historian and unofficial fifth member Carl Koch, Undone originally included a collage of pop culture samples. These were spliced together to create a sort of positive-negative argument. However, WEEZER's label wouldn't foot the cost of licensing so many samples for one song on a rookie band's debut record. So this version was scrapped eventually. So So later, these samples were substituted with a couple of conversations recorded by bassist Matt Sharp, Carl Koch, and friend of the band, Michael Allen. This new version featured a hastily scripted party sequence that actually really lightened the song's mood. Said Carl about it, and I quote, "The original intended vibe of the stoked versus the non-stoked on this song was preserved, with Matt playing the part of the impossibly happy dude, and I the out-of-place tongue-tied spaz who wasn't happy to be there. Michael played the party girl looking for favors, which my unstoked guy couldn't refuse." As we continue to break down the song, I want to thank our sponsor, Zenni Eyewear, the glasses I always wear on here. Did you know, besides getting quality eyewear in a variety of styles, you can also get virtual reality prescription lenses? With exceptional detail, comfort, and clarity, at Zenni, there's something for everybody. Check this out by clicking on our info button or our link below to get the best prices, starting at $6.95. But I think what sealed the deal for the Sweater Song to be taken as humorous was its ridiculous music video, and I mean that in the best way possible. Set against an appropriately staged blue screen, yeah, the promo was supposed to be a serious piece. However, when finished, there was just too many shenanigans not to smile. You got Wilson running around the drum kit, there's Sharp snapping along to the groove and sitting on the floor. On the mic, Cuomo sports a shaggy mop top haircut, and of course there's the 10 grand worth of dogs running wild across the set. Yeah, the dogs cost that much. Reportedly, the band wanted the video to have nothing to do with a sweater, especially after Geffen received 25 treatments for the video, all of which featured sweater concepts. One had the band in a sweater factory, and another they were knit together in a giant sweater, but instead it was the starkly simple pitch of director Spike Jonze's that caught their eye. A blue stage, a steady cam, a pack of wild dogs. The video was shot in one unbroken take with the guys playing to a sped up version of the track. Then running it back at a slower speed, this created the illusion that WEEZER was playing the song in the correct time, but moving in slow motion. And here's where things got silly. The process of repeatedly shooting the same take 25 times resulted in both exhaustion and hilarity. According to Carl Koch, the take that was chosen for the video was somewhere between take 15 and take 21. Said Carl about it, and I quote, "By this point, the band had abandoned hope of doing a serious take, and thank goodness." Now, the video was an immediate MTV hit, pushing the band into the mainstream. The single was Weezer's first ever, and although it only reached number 57 on the Hot 100 and number 30 on the mainstream rock chart, it did go to number 6 on the US alternative chart, making it the band's breakthrough on the modern rock airwaves, which was perfect. After the breakout of Undone, Weezer's newfound popularity just started to grow. Their next single, Buddy Holly, that upped the ante, particularly with its Happy Days throwback music video. That one reached number 2 on the US alternative charts, and it went to number 17 on the mainstream top 40. The record's third single, one of my favorites by this band, Say It Ain't So, that hit number 7 on the alternative charts, and that made for a trio of top 10 hits in their niche. These now classic singles helped propel the sales of the Blue Album to nearly 4 million copies and the pinnacle of nerd rock. And although that characterization disappointed Rivers, WEEZER, they'd more than earned it. I mean, with Blue Album references to comics and D&D and the music video shots of the guys in sweater vests as well as kicking hacky sacks, it's just hard to argue otherwise. That's not a bad thing, though. In fact, that's a big reason why the Blue Album is so beloved. Together, these 10 tracks create one hell of a fun, cathartic experience for all of us misfits. Today, the Blue Album is an indisputable 90s standard. But what happened after that? Could WEEZER sustain this momentum? Well, the band returned in '96 with an unexpected offering. Rivers, doubling down on his vision of being a serious guy, tortured. The album Pinkerton is a self-deprecating, tragic collection of downshifted tracks for sure. Seriously maligned in its day, Pinkerton was labeled as a complete failure. It did manage a number 19 ranking on the Billboard 200, just 3 spots lower than the Blue Album. And lead single El Scorcho, that reached number 19 on the alternative charts as well. But even though it was pegged as a flop, as the years passed, this album flipped a complete 180. Now credited as, the start of emo. It's revered by many as one of Weezer's best albums, so time will tell. After a few years of band upheaval, Weezer returned in 2001 with another self-titled affair, dubbed the Green Album. Once again produced by Ocasek, Green was a return to the catchy pop sensibilities of Blue in a way. This one peaked at number 4 in the US, but once again was met with less than universal approval from Weezer fans. On 2002's Maladroit, that was a mixed bag as well, though it did reach number 3 on the Billboard charts. 2 more singles broke the top 15, including Keep Fishin', which got an assist from the Muppets. Had Weezer stopped there after 4 albums, I think a lot of fans would agree that it was a mostly good run. However, Weezer kept the pedal to the metal through the first decade of the 2000s, and beginning with 2005's Make Believe, things started to get a little ugly. Rivers, who had once sang about hiding from the world in his garage, was now singing about rolling like a celebrity in Beverly Hills and taking drugs in a new Mercedes-Benz. Yeah, despite Make Believe scoring 3 hit singles, by this point, Weezer fans were starting to get a little bit annoyed. 2008's Red Album and 2009's Ratitude, that rounded out the decade. And the 2010s kicked off with Hurley in 2010. All 3 broke the US top 10 on the US albums chart and together scored 5 top 25 hits. But this era is typically seen as a blight on Weezer's history, with Ratitude featuring some particularly distasteful tracks. I guess part of what made the Blue Album so beloved was that it was all killer, no filler. But throughout the first decade of the 2000s, more often than not, it felt like Weezer was just going through the motions. The success was there. By 2010, Weezer had notched 16 top 20 hits on the alternative charts, including 4 number 2s and 3 number 1s. However, the band seemed like a shadow of their former selves. Were people really getting sick of Weezer, or was it just the loudest voices talking? Well, in 2010, one loudmouth anti-fan had had enough. Actually, a Seattle resident named James Burns. He started a crowdfunding campaign to put a permanent end to Weezer. He proposed to raise $10 million to bribe the band into retirement using a now-defunct fundraising website. Said Burns, and I quote, "I think that they're pretty much horrible, and always have been, even in the early 90s. But this isn't about me, this is about the Weezer fans. They're our brothers and our sisters, our friends, our lovers. Every year, Rivers Cuomo swears that he's changed and that their new album is the best thing that he's done since Pinkerton. And what happens? Another pile of crap like Beverly Hills or I'm Your Daddy." Burns called it an abusive relationship and said he was tired of his friends being disappointed by Weezer albums that sucked. His words. He reasoned that if everyone who had bought Weezer's second album, Pinkerton, pitched in $12, then they could reach their goal. At the time, that number was 852,000 units sold. In a final appeal to the band, Burns said, "I beg you, Weezer, take our money and just disappear." The ridiculous campaign stirred up all kinds of media attention. It even got a response from band member Patrick Wilson, who posted on Twitter, "If they can make a 20, we'll do the deluxe breakup." 10 million, 20 million, it wouldn't have been enough. And as it turns out, Burns' campaign crashed and burned with very little financial support. As of today, Weezer's still together. But what do you think? Did James Burns have a point? Or was he just a hater with nothing better to do? I'm not gonna lie, we, the original generation Weezer fans, were really spoiled. There's no denying the shockwave-inducing impact that the Blue Album had back in the 90s. It was a pop culture phenomenon. It was flawless, a flawless collection of nerd rock from start to finish. And I mean that in the best possible way. The Blue Album set such a high standard in modern rock, making the rest of Weezer's albums pale in comparison. And it all started with the dark, mysterious, and comical release of Undone-the Sweater Song. Leave us a comment about Weezer and their perfect debut album. What are your memories of Undone-the Sweater Song and the Blue Album and the campaign to raise millions to end Weezer? Let's have a great discussion below. Such a perfect album. If you like our content, we invite you to subscribe. We would love to have you as part of our community. Until next time, 3 chords and the truth, my friends.